The silent arrival. The Draknar Empire had ruled the eastern spiral arm of the galaxy for over 4 centuries. Their dominion stretched across 200 star systems, and their reputation preceded them like a dark shadow across the cosmos. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They did not build. They did not create. They consumed. The Draknar were psychic predators, beings who had evolved to feed on the emotional energy of other sentient species. Fear was their favorite delicacy, and they had become masters at cultivating it. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, the Draknar possessed 6 muscular limbs and bodies covered in obsidian scales that reflected light in unsettling patterns. Their heads featured multiple sensory organs that could detect electromagnetic fields, thermal signatures, and most importantly, the psychic emanations of fear. When a Draknar looked at you with its cluster of silver eyes, it did not just see your body. It saw your terror, tasted your despair, and drank deeply from your horror. 47 species had fallen before them. 47 civilizations had been reduced to cattle, kept alive only to provide sustenance for their masters. The Galactic Federation had maintained an uneasy truce with the Draknar for decades. The treaty was simple: the Draknar would not expand beyond their current borders, and the Federation would not interfere in their internal affairs. It was not peace. It was merely the absence of war. Both sides knew the treaty was temporary, a breathing space before the inevitable conflict resumed. The Federation spent those years building defenses, fortifying border worlds, and praying that when the Draknar finally came, they would be ready. They were not ready. When the Draknar war fleet emerged from hyperspace above the human colony world of Arcturus 7, it became immediately clear that the treaty had meant nothing. The Draknar had simply been waiting for the right moment, the right weakness to exploit. Arcturus 7 was that weakness. It was a frontier world, home to 3 million human settlers who had built thriving cities in the planet's temperate zones. The colony had minimal military presence, just a small garrison and orbital defense platforms designed to deter pirates, not repel a full-scale invasion. The Draknar attacked at dawn. Their warships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, releasing thousands of warrior drones that swept across the cities with devastating efficiency. The human defenders fought bravely. They had weapons, training, and the courage that came from defending their homes and families. But courage meant nothing against an enemy that could reach into your mind and twist your thoughts into knots of paralyzing fear. Within hours, the planetary defense network had collapsed. Within days, the major population centers had fallen. War Master Thrasher stood atop the central tower of New Helena, the colony's capital city, and surveyed his conquest with satisfaction. His sensory organs drank in the waves of terror emanating from the surviving humans huddled in detention centers below. It was exquisite. Human fear had a particular flavor, sharp and clean, untainted by the resignation that older species developed after centuries of subjugation. These humans still believed they could resist. They still hoped for rescue. That hope made their fear all the more delicious. A subordinate approached, its scales rippling with respectful patterns. War Master, the human military installations have been neutralized. Casualty estimates indicate we have eliminated approximately 40% of their combat forces. The remainder have retreated into the wilderness regions. Thrasher barely acknowledged the report. The outcome had never been in doubt. Humans were a young species, barely 2 centuries into their expansion among the stars. The Galactic Federation had accepted them as members only 50 years ago, more out of pity than respect. They possessed no psychic abilities, no advanced defensive technologies, nothing that would make them a credible threat to the Draknar Empire. Consolidate our hold on the urban centers, Thrasher commanded. Send hunting parties into the wilderness to pursue the scattered resistance. We will break them completely within a month. The subordinate hesitated. War Master, our intelligence indicates that Earth has been notified of our invasion. Should we expect a military response? Thrasher emitted a sound that translated roughly as laughter. Let them come. If Earth sends its fleets, we will destroy them and add another world to our empire. Humans are prey, nothing more. They will learn their place in the natural order. What War Master Thrasher did not know, what his intelligence networks had failed to detect, was that Earth's response had already arrived. They had not come in fleets. They had not announced their presence with warships and orbital bombardments. They had come in silence, in the dark, in ways the Drachner could never anticipate. They had come as shadows. Captain Marcus Kane had been a soldier for 18 years. He had served in conflicts across a dozen worlds, from counterinsurgency operations on the frontier to hostage rescue missions in deep space stations. He had earned decorations for valor, commendations for leadership, and the respect of every man and woman who had served under his command. But none of that was why he had been selected for Shadow 6. He had been selected because he could do things that most soldiers could not even imagine. He could move through enemy territory without leaving a trace. He could kill silently, efficiently, and without hesitation. He could survive in environments that would break ordinary men. Most importantly, he could lead others who possessed the same capabilities. Shadow 6 consisted of 8 operators, each one a specialist in some aspect of unconventional warfare. Sergeant Lisa Chen was their communications and electronic warfare expert, capable of infiltrating any network and turning enemy technology against them. Corporal David Torres specialized in demolitions and breaching, able to destroy any target or create access where none existed. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo served as their medical specialist and biochemical weapons expert. The others each brought their own unique skills: sniping, close-quarters combat, intelligence analysis, and infiltration. Together, they formed a precision instrument designed for one purpose: to strike at enemies who believed themselves untouchable. They had inserted onto Arcturus 7 3 days after the invasion began. Their transport had dropped them at high altitude in stealth pods that scattered across the northern wilderness. They had landed separately, gathered their equipment, and moved independently to the designated rally point. No radio contact. No lights. No sound. They were ghosts from the moment they touched ground. The rally point was a cave system 40 kilometers from New Helena. Kane arrived first, as he always did, and methodically prepared the position while waiting for his team. One by one, they materialized from the darkness. Chen emerged from the east, her movements fluid and silent. Torres appeared from the south, barely disturbing the undergrowth. Okonkwo seemed to simply materialize from the shadows themselves. When all 8 operators had assembled, Kane gathered them in the deepest chamber of the cave system. Battery-powered lights cast their faces in harsh relief. They looked tired, as anyone would after days of travel through hostile territory, but their eyes were alert and focused. This was what they had trained for their entire careers. This was the moment when all those years of preparation would be tested. Kane activated a holographic display that showed tactical data on the Drachner occupation forces. The intelligence was current as of 6 hours ago, updated by drone surveillance and intercepted communications. The Drachner control approximately 70% of the planetary surface, Kane began. They have established command posts in all major cities and are conducting regular patrols through the surrounding regions. Estimated enemy strength is between 15 and 20,000 warriors, supported by armor and air assets. Our mission is not to liberate the planet. We do not have the numbers or resources for that. Our mission is to make the Drachner wish they had never come here. Chen leaned forward. What is the rules of engagement? Kane's expression did not change. There are no rules. The Drachner do not follow the conventions of warfare. They torture. They terrorize. They feed on suffering. We will respond in kind. We will hunt their leaders. We will destroy their supplies. We will kill them in ways that make no tactical sense, in ways they cannot predict or defend against. We will teach them what it means to be afraid. The team spent the next 48 hours in detailed planning. They studied Drachner patrol routes, communication frequencies, and behavioral patterns. They identified high-value targets, command personnel, supply depots, communication hubs. They plotted infiltration routes that would take them through the heart of occupied territory without detection. They prepared equipment, checking and rechecking every weapon, every explosive charge, every piece of technology that would keep them alive. On the third night, they moved. Shadow 6 split into two-person teams and departed the cave system at staggered intervals. Kane and Chen moved toward New Helena itself, planning to penetrate the city and gather intelligence on Drakner command structure. Torres and Okonkwo headed for a supply depot on the eastern perimeter. The other 4 operators dispersed to their assigned positions. They would not communicate except in absolute emergencies. They would operate independently, each team a separate blade cutting into the enemy's flesh. Kane and Chen approached New Helena through the industrial sector, an area that had been heavily damaged during the initial invasion. Collapsed buildings provided excellent concealment, and the Drakner had deemed the area cleared and irrelevant. They moved through the ruins like water, flowing around obstacles, never presenting a silhouette, never making a sound. Kane had spent years perfecting this kind of movement. It was not just about being quiet. It was about becoming part of the environment, about understanding the rhythm of a place so thoroughly that you could move through it without disturbing that rhythm. They reached an overwatch position 300 meters from the central tower where War Master Thrasher had established his headquarters. From here, they could observe Drakner patrols, study their patterns, and identify vulnerabilities. Chen set up her equipment and began intercepting enemy communications. The Drakner used sophisticated encryption, but human intelligence had been studying their signal protocols for years. Within an hour, Chen had access to their tactical network. Kane watched the patrols through his scope. The Drakner moved with absolute confidence, weapons lowered, attention scattered. They believed they owned this world. They believed nothing could threaten them. Kane counted the seconds between patrols, noted the size of each unit, memorized the faces of individual warriors. He was building a mental map of the enemy's habits, learning their patterns the way a hunter learns the habits of prey. On the 4th night, the killing began. A Drakner patrol was moving through the warehouse district, for warriors searching for resistance fighters. They moved in a loose formation, relying on their psychic senses to detect any threats. Those senses told them the area was empty. Those senses were wrong. The first warrior died instantly, a single shot through the neural cluster at the base of its skull. The body collapsed without sound. The other 3 warriors spun around, searching for the threat, their psychic abilities straining to detect the attacker. They found nothing. Humans produced no psychic signature. To Drakner senses, they simply did not exist. The second warrior died 5 seconds later, throat cut from behind by a blade that moved faster than thought. The third warrior began broadcasting an emergency signal, calling for reinforcements. The signal cut off abruptly as an explosive charge destroyed its communication device and most of its head. The fourth warrior ran. It made it 20 meters before Corporal Torres put 3 rounds through its center mass. The entire engagement had lasted less than 30 seconds. 4 enemy combatants eliminated without a single human casualty. The bodies were dragged into a warehouse and positioned in ways that would disturb anyone who found them. This was not just killing. This was psychological warfare. When the reinforcements arrived, they found only blood and silence. The bodies had been arranged in a circle, their weapons placed in the center like an offering. On the wall, written in Drakner blood, was a message in their own language: "We are coming for you." War Master Thrasher received the report with fury and confusion. How had an enemy penetrated his security perimeter? How had they killed 4 warriors without being detected? He ordered increased patrols, enhanced security measures, and psychic sweeps of the entire city. His warriors found nothing. The humans were invisible to every sense the Drakner possessed. Over the next week, the attacks continued. A supply convoy vanished between checkpoints, leaving only burning vehicles and dead warriors. A communication relay exploded in the middle of the night, severing contact with 3 outlying garrisons. A senior officer was found dead in his quarters, killed by poison that left no trace. Each attack was different. Each attack was impossible to predict. The Drachner were being hunted, and they had no idea how to fight back. For the first time in their history, the Drachner began to feel something they had only inflicted on others. They began to feel afraid. And in the darkness, watching through scopes and sensors, Shadow 6 smiled. The hunt had only just begun. The hunters become prey. War Master Thrasher had not slept in 4 days. Sleep was becoming impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the report scrolling through his mind. 17 warriors dead in the past week. 3 supply depots destroyed. 2 communication hubs offline. And worst of all, no confirmed sightings of the enemy. His subordinates brought him theories and excuses, but no answers. The attacks showed no pattern, no predictable rhythm that would allow him to mount an effective defense. Whoever was hunting his warriors possessed a level of tactical sophistication that defied everything the Drachner understood about warfare. He stood in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the disposition of his forces across Arcturus 7. Red markers indicated recent attack sites. They were scattered across the map like droplets of blood, each one a wound in his occupation force. Thrasher's sensory organs swept across the room, reading the fear emanating from his own officers. They were Drachner warriors, bred for combat, trained to inspire terror in others. Yet now they moved with nervous glances, checking shadows, jumping at unexpected sounds. The prey had become predators, and his warriors were learning what it meant to be hunted. A tactical officer approached with another report. War Master, we have increased patrol strength by 40% and implemented rotating guard schedules at all critical facilities. We have also established psychic detection grids throughout the urban zones. Thrasher's scales rippled with irritation. And yet the attacks continue. Explain to me how an enemy we cannot detect is systematically dismantling our occupation. The officer hesitated, its eyes flickering with uncertainty. War Master, our intelligence analysts believe we are facing human special operations forces. They possess training in asymmetric warfare and advanced stealth technologies that mask them from our psychic senses. Humans, Thrasher hissed. Weak, primitive humans. You expect me to believe that these creatures, who have barely learned to navigate the stars, are capable of defeating Drachner warriors? The officer stood firm despite its fear. War Master, we must acknowledge the evidence. The tactics being employed require extensive training, sophisticated equipment, and intimate knowledge of our operational procedures. These are not ordinary soldiers. These are specialists who have spent years preparing for exactly this kind of engagement. Thrasher dismissed the officer with a sharp gesture. He refused to accept that humans posed a genuine threat. There had to be another explanation. Perhaps the Galactic Federation had sent advisors or technology to assist the humans. Perhaps this was some elaborate deception designed to make him overestimate the enemy's capabilities. While Thrasher debated theories in his command center, Captain Marcus Kane was implementing the next phase of his operation. Shadow 6 had been joined by 3 additional teams that had inserted onto Arcturus 7 over the past week. Reaper Squad specialized in direct action missions and had been systematically targeting Drachner armor assets. Phantom Unit consisted of intelligence specialists who had penetrated the enemy's communication networks and were feeding Shadow 6 real-time tactical data. Ghost Company, the largest of the units with 20 operators, had established a network of supply caches and safe houses throughout the occupied territory. Kane gathered the team leaders in a concealed bunker 15 kilometers outside New Helena. The bunker had been a civil defense shelter before the invasion, and Ghost Company had transformed it into a fully functional operations center. Holographic displays showed updated intelligence on Drachner force disposition, recent attack assessments, and projected enemy responses. Kane studied the data with the focused intensity that had made him one of the most effective special operations commanders in human military history. We have achieved our initial objectives, Kane began. The Drachner are off balance, reactive, and increasingly paranoid. They have diverted significant resources to defensive measures, which means fewer patrols and reduced offensive operations against the civilian resistance. Now we escalate. He changed the holographic display to show detailed schematics of the Drakner command structure. We have identified 3 primary targets that will cripple their ability to maintain control of this planet. First, War Master Thrasher himself. Second, the central logistics hub that supplies all Drakner forces on planet. Third, their orbital communication relay that maintains contact with the Drakner fleet. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo raised a concern. Taking out Thrasher will be extremely difficult. He is surrounded by elite guards and rarely leaves his command center. The building is heavily fortified and constantly monitored. Kane nodded. Which is why we are not going to assault the building. We are going to make him come to us. He outlined a plan that was audacious to the point of madness. They would stage a coordinated series of attacks across New Helena that would force Thrasher to respond personally. The Drakner Warmaster was a warrior at heart, and his pride would not allow him to cower in his fortress while his forces were being decimated. When he emerged to take command of the counterattack, Shadow 6 would be waiting. The operation began 3 nights later. Reaper Squad hit a Drakner garrison on the eastern edge of the city with precision mortar fire, destroying their vehicle pool and ammunition storage. Phantom Unit hacked into the enemy communication network and broadcast false reports of a major resistance uprising in the southern districts. Ghost Company executed simultaneous raids on 3 supply depots, overwhelming the guards with superior firepower and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Within 2 hours, New Helena was in chaos. Drakner units were rushing to respond to multiple threats, their coordination breaking down as conflicting orders flooded their communication channels. War Master Thrasher received the reports with mounting rage. This was no longer a series of isolated incidents. This was a coordinated assault designed to humiliate him and destroy his authority. He could feel the fear radiating from his warriors, could taste their doubt and uncertainty. If he did not act decisively, his entire occupation force would collapse into panic. He made the decision his pride demanded. He would lead a strike force personally to crush these human raiders and prove that the Drakner Empire could not be challenged. Thrasher assembled 50 of his finest warriors, equipped them with the best weapons and armor available, and moved out from his command center with the absolute confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. His sensory organs swept the area continuously, searching for any sign of the enemy. His psychic abilities reached out, probing for the taste of fear that would betray the human's position. He found nothing. The streets were empty, the buildings silent. It was as if the entire city was holding its breath. They were 3 blocks from the command center when the trap was sprung. The lead elements of Thrasher's strike force entered a plaza surrounded by collapsed buildings. In the center of the plaza stood a single human, a woman wearing dark combat gear and holding a rifle pointed at the ground. She made no attempt to hide, no attempt to flee. She simply stood there, waiting. Thrasher's warriors raised their weapons, preparing to cut her down. The woman smiled and spoke a single word into her communication device. Now. The plaza erupted in fire and thunder. Explosives hidden in the surrounding buildings detonated simultaneously, bringing tons of rubble down on the Drakner formation. Warriors scattered, seeking cover, their formation disintegrating. Before they could regroup, human operators emerged from concealed positions and opened fire with devastating accuracy. These were not the panicked shots of desperate defenders. These were controlled bursts from weapons handled by experts who never missed. Thrasher watched in horror as his elite warriors fell. A sniper shot took down his second-in-command from 800 meters away. A shaped charge destroyed the heavy assault vehicle that was supposed to provide fire support. Human operators moved through the chaos like ghosts, appearing just long enough to kill before vanishing back into the smoke and debris. The Drakner tried to use their psychic abilities to locate the attackers, but humans produced no psychic signature. They were invisible, untouchable, unstoppable. Captain Kane moved through the battle with cold precision. He had positioned his teams perfectly, creating overlapping fields of fire that turned the plaza into a killing ground. Every angle was covered, every escape route blocked. The Drachner were trapped in a carefully prepared ambush, and they were dying because they had forgotten the first rule of warfare: never underestimate your enemy. Kane's rifle barked 3 times, and 3 Drachner warriors collapsed with fatal wounds. He reloaded without thinking, muscle memory honed by thousands of hours of training taking over. War Master Thrasher realized too late that he had walked into a perfectly executed trap. These humans had not been running or hiding. They had been maneuvering, positioning themselves for exactly this moment. They had studied his psychology, predicted his responses, and manipulated him into doing exactly what they wanted. The realization filled him with something he had never experienced before. Not just fear, but a deeper understanding of his own mortality. He was not the ultimate predator. He was prey. Thrasher gathered his remaining warriors, perhaps 20 of the 50 he had brought, and fought his way out of the plaza. They retreated toward the command center, taking casualties with every block. Human snipers harassed them from concealed positions. Explosive charges detonated in their path. It was a running battle through streets that had become hostile territory, and Thrasher understood with crystal clarity that he had already lost. Not just this battle, but the entire campaign. The humans had broken his occupation force not with superior numbers or advanced technology, but with superior tactics and an absolute refusal to fight on Drachner terms. When Thrasher finally reached the command center, he had fewer than a dozen warriors left. His scales were scorched, his body wounded in multiple places, his pride shattered beyond repair. He immediately ordered a full evacuation of Arcturus 7. His subordinates protested, arguing that retreat would be seen as weakness, that the Drachner Empire had never abandoned a conquest. Thrasher silenced them with a roar that shook the walls. We are leaving this world because staying means death. These humans are not prey. They are hunters, and we are overmatched. The Drachner withdrawal began within hours. Transports descended from orbit to extract warriors from positions across the planet. The evacuation was chaotic and disorganized, nothing like the disciplined invasion that had begun just 6 weeks earlier. Human special operations teams harassed the withdrawal, destroying transports, eliminating stragglers, ensuring that every Drachner warrior who left Arcturus 7 carried memories of terror and defeat. By the time the last Drachner ship departed, they had lost over 3,000 warriors. The humans had lost 47 operators. Captain Kane stood on a rooftop in New Helena and watched the enemy ships disappear into the sky. Around him, his team was silent, exhausted, but undefeated. They had accomplished what the Galactic Federation's conventional forces had failed to do. They had faced the Drachner Empire and won. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through superior training, superior tactics, and the simple fact that humans had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other efficiently. Those lessons translated well to killing aliens. The news of the Drachner defeat spread across the galaxy with astonishing speed. Species that had trembled at the mention of the Drachner Empire now whispered a different name with equal parts fear and respect. They spoke of human special forces, warriors who moved like shadows and struck like lightning. They told stories of operators who could infiltrate any position, eliminate any target, and vanish without trace. The stories grew with each telling, becoming legends that parents told their children to inspire courage or instill caution. The Galactic Federation requested a formal briefing on human special operations capabilities. Ambassador Chen, who had coordinated Earth's response to the invasion, stood before the Federation Council and explained in simple terms what had happened on Arcturus 7. We did not defeat the Drachner with superior technology or greater numbers. We defeated them by refusing to fight on their terms. The Drachner are psychic predators who rely on fear and intimidation. Our operators are trained to operate without fear, to embrace danger as a familiar companion, to function effectively in situations that would break ordinary soldiers. One of the council members asked the question that everyone was thinking. Are these human special forces truly as formidable as the reports suggest? Can they genuinely challenge enemies that have defeated conventional military forces? Chen's response was measured but firm. Our special forces are the product of thousands of years of human conflict. Every war we have fought, every battle we have lost or won, has taught us lessons about warfare. We have refined those lessons, distilled them into training programs that produce warriors of exceptional capability. They are not superhuman. They are simply very, very good at what they do. The council member pressed further. And what exactly do they do? Chen smiled slightly. They make the impossible possible. They go into situations where the odds are overwhelmingly against them and find ways to win anyway. They adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle, and complete their missions regardless of cost. That is what makes them special. Not their equipment or their technology, but their mindset and their training. The Federation Council absorbed this information with varying degrees of disbelief and concern. Several species began requesting human military advisors to train their own special operations units. Earth agreed, understanding that sharing knowledge would strengthen the galaxy's collective defense against threats like the Drachner. On Arcturus 7, the human colonists emerged from hiding and began rebuilding their world. They had lost much during the invasion, but they had gained something as well. They had learned that humanity was not weak or insignificant. They had warriors who could stand against the galaxy's most terrifying predators and make those predators flee in terror. It was a powerful realization, one that would shape humanity's role in galactic affairs for generations to come. Captain Marcus Kane and Shadow 6 received commendations from Earth's military command and gratitude from the Arcturus 7 colonial government. They accepted both with quiet professionalism, then returned to their training. There would be other threats, other missions, other enemies who believed themselves invincible. And when those enemies emerged, humanity's special forces would be ready. They would move through the darkness, strike with precision, and remind the galaxy of a simple truth: humans might not be the strongest species, or the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But when it came to warfare, when it came to the art of hunting and killing, humans were very, very good at their job. War Master Thacker survived the retreat from Arcturus 7, but his career did not. He was stripped of rank and exiled to a frontier world where he spent his remaining years warning anyone who would listen about the humans and their special forces. Most dismissed his warnings as the ravings of a broken warrior who had lost his nerve. But some listened. Some understood that humanity had introduced something new to galactic warfare, something that changed the fundamental calculus of conflict. The Drachner Empire never again attempted to invade human territory. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages, a new phrase entered common usage. When speaking of impossible military operations, of missions that defied all logic and reason, beings would say simply, "Send the humans." Because everyone now knew that when humans called something special forces, they meant warriors who struck with a force that made even demons quiver in fear.